Session 10, Changing Your Self-Concept.
To repeat, all change in your life begins with a change in your self-concept. And that brings us back to what we talked about when we talked about the three ingredients of self-concept at the very beginning. We said that there were three parts: the self-ideal, the self-image, and the self-esteem, or how much you like yourself. Now, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to talk a little bit about what we call the self-ideal, because the self-ideal is the person that you would most like to be. When you start thinking about changing your personality, improving the quality of your life, your inner and your outer life, you have to start off with a target. You have to start off with something to shoot for, something to aim at. So let's talk about this. The self-ideal is a fundamental part of your personality. The self-ideal is a combination of all of the qualities, how much you like yourself, and there's a difference between your self-image and your self-ideal. The distance between these two, the way you see yourself now and the way you would ideally like to be, has a major impact on your self-esteem. People who see themselves working progressively toward becoming more and more like the people they want to be have high self-esteem. People who see themselves as having an enormous, almost unbridgeable distance between the person they see themselves as now and the person they know they should or could be usually have low self-esteem. So the starting point of change in the self-concept, to repeat, comes with defining clearly what it is you want to look like. Now, when I was about 17, 18 years old, I sat down with a notebook and I wrote out a description of the person that I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote several pages. I described my personality and my height and my weight and how I would get along with people and so on. And many years later, 10, 15, 20 years later, after I had traveled around the world twice, after I'd been in 80 countries, after I had done a great story of a young fellow who decided he wanted to improve his life, and he was working for an insurance company. And he sat and looked around him, and he was number 28 or 29 out of 30 people in an insurance company selling insurance, and he'd been there for several years, and his career was going nowhere. And he began looking at this, and he said, now, who do I admire? Who would I like to be like? Who would my ideal be? And he decided he wanted to be like the top salesman in the branch. And he started to look at the top salesmen and the top one or two salespeople in the branch, and he started to think about them and think about what they did. And he began to talk to them and get advice from them. And over the course of the next few years, by using this process, by patterning himself after the people he admired, he became more and more like them. He dressed like them. He walked like them. He talked like them. He worked the way they did. He studied the way they did. And in time, he became not only the top salesman in the branch, the top salesman in the region, the top salesman in the division, eventually the top salesman in the country, and he became a marketing vice president for one of the biggest insurance companies in the nation, simply by establishing a self-ideal. And there were 2 solid years. He read books, listened to tapes, took courses, and became an authority within the company on human relations, and then put together a course of his own and went throughout the company as the president of the company and taught this course within his company, becoming the things that he was teaching. In other words, he decided that to be very good with people was both desirable and necessary for himself, his company, and his future. And then he went about through the process of gradual defining the ideal and began working progressively toward it. In 2 years, he had rounded out his personality from being a lopsided, left-brain, linear, analytical person to being a totally rounded, fully functioning human being. One of the hallmarks of great leaders, one of the hallmarks of outstanding men and women, is that they're willing to make the efforts necessary to bring about the changes that are essential. Now, the second stage, or the second step in changing your self-concept, is to begin thinking about yourself as you would ideally be. Begin thinking about yourself as your ideal person. For instance, if you wanted to be an outstanding person in human relations, you'd begin thinking about yourself as you would be as a human relations specialist. But let us say you want something very simple. Most people say that their major weakness is that they are too impatient, too intolerant, they get angry too quickly, irritable, so on. Maybe what you should do is start with something very simple. Very important to start with something simple, because if you can change something simple, it proves to you that you can change something large. So you begin thinking about yourself. Let us say that you tend to be a little bit impatient or short-tempered when you're tired, or a little bit irritable with your children or your spouse at the end of the day. So then you begin thinking about yourself as you would be if you were a warm, patient, kind, loving, tolerant human being. Begin thinking about yourself in the situations where you normally become cross and irritable, and begin thinking about yourself as being relaxed, positive, supportive, encouraging, unruffled. Begin thinking about yourself as the ideal. Think now, who do you know who has the type of personality? Now, it can be a television personality. It can be Bill Cosby. Now, that's starting point. Because of the law of expression, whatever is impressed is expressed. If you begin thinking about yourself, you begin finding it's almost like turning the wheel of your personality. You begin to become a different person. Now, the third step is you begin to visualize. Now, what does visualize mean? Well, there are thousands of books written on visualization. One of the most powerful of all human abilities is the ability to create clear mental pictures. You see, your subconscious, which is where all of your programming takes place, is activated by mental pictures combined with emotion. So when you create clear mental pictures, when you begin to dwell on a clear mental picture of the person that you would like to be, you begin to close your eyes or think about the person that you would like to be, the subconscious cannot tell the difference between a real experience, one that is actually happening to you, and one that you vividly imagine on the screen of your mind. And this method of visualization, of creating a clear mental picture, and then remember we talked about the law of practice, which is the law of repetition. By practicing it over and over and over again. Imagine, for instance, that you wanted to become a proficient public speaker. Simple as that. And let us say this is you, and this is your eyes, and here is your conscious mind, and here is your unconscious mind. Let us say you wanted to become a proficient public speaker. Well, if you went out and you gave a whole series of talks, and you got positive response, and people applauded and told you that it was a good talk, and you did this over and over again, no matter how terrified you are of public speaking right now, if you did it often enough, gradually you would store up enough memories to the point where you would feel no uneasiness at all about speaking publicly. Now, the reason I mention speaking publicly is that something like 54% of the American public would rather die than give a talk in public. They put the fear of public speaking ahead of the fear of death. It's one of the greatest of all fears in our society. However, no child is born as afraid of public speaking. No child comes into the world with a fear of speaking in front of audiences. As a matter of fact, every one of us gave our first public talk stark naked, upside down, in front of a room full of strangers, if you remember that, and it's been downhill for most of us ever since. If you have a series of external experiences, however, and all of those experiences are positive, then they're stored away as positive reports in the public speaking file. However, let us say that you have a tremendous feeling of anxiety about speaking, and that can come from 100 different reasons, but you begin to play on the screen of your mind. You have this continuous real projector. You begin to play on the screen of your mind a picture of yourself speaking effectively in front of a group. You begin to read about other people who speak effectively. You begin to read the books of successful speakers who tell how they did it and how nervous they were. You begin to take a course and you begin to study and you begin to learn how to do it. You begin to learn how to prepare and to outline a talk, and you begin thinking about yourself over and over again as capable of doing it. The picture that you play on the screen of your mind is accepted by the subconscious as a real experience as long as you vividly imagine it. And this is the key. It is the vividness of the picture. The more clearly you visualize it, the more frequently you visualize it, the more emotionally or intensely you visualize it, and the longer you visualize it, the more of an impact it has on the subconscious mind, so that you can, in many respects, actually become halfway or three-quarters of the way toward being a competent speaker or being competent in almost anything simply by visualizing and playing this picture over and over again. By the way, I use the example of speaking in public for a very specific reason. Most of us are afraid of it. And what I have found is that if you can use these methods of mental programming to eliminate one major fear that may be holding you back in life, you will prove to yourself forever that you can eliminate any self-limiting belief and overcome it and go on to accomplish what you want. I have given this advice to thousands of people. It's simply this. If you have an uneasiness with regard to public speaking, or any other fear, but public speaking for this example, make the decision right now to get over it. Now, here's two ways that you can get over it. Toastmasters. Does this method work? Well, I'll guarantee you that it works. Toastmasters was set up in 1923 as an organization, a voluntary organization. Groups of men and women come together, small groups. They meet once a week, and they have breakfast, luncheon, or dinner meetings, and at each meeting, each person has a chance to talk. People who are so terrified of public speaking they could not lead silent prayer in a phone booth, after 10 or 15 weeks in Toastmasters are capable of standing up with 1 minute's notice and giving an extemporaneous talk in front of an audience of strangers. Toastmasters works. Why? It's because every single time a person stands up, they get positive feedback, they get correction, they get advice, they get applause, they get support. Eventually, what you do is you build up a whole series of positive reports in your subconscious mind that says, when it comes to public speaking, it's easy. If you want to be effective at selling, if you want to be effective at leading, if you want to be effective as a parent, if you want to be effective with other human beings, all you have to do is practice over and over again, and practice in your mind over and over until eventually you will find that when you think about whatever it is, the fear level will go down, confidence level will go up. By the way, one other area that you can go to if you want to learn to be more capable speaking is Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie has a wonderful course, which is just called the Dale Carnegie course, which really helps people become proficient in public speaking. Over 10 to 14 weeks, you get an opportunity every single week to get up and speak in front of your peers. The next is affirmations. Now, with affirmations, your potential is unlimited. Affirmations are the most powerful words that you can possibly say. Affirmations are based on what we call the 3 Ps. In that, with affirmations, we reprogram ourselves unconsciously. Affirmations are strong, positive, assertive statements that you say about yourself, to yourself, and believe. And they're based on the 3 Ps. And the Ps are, first of all, personal. All affirmations, all statements that you say to yourself have to be couched in the personal tense, the I. If you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. When you say, I like myself, it accesses the subconscious directly. Every single command that begins with an I opens the subconscious mind and says, valuable information coming down. Prepare or get ready. And also positive. All affirmative statements must be couched in the positive tense, because the subconscious mind filters out negatives and only takes the words that the positive expression. For example, if you wanted to quit smoking, you wouldn't say, I don't smoke anymore. I don't smoke anymore. You would say, I am a non-smoker. I am a non-smoker. The words I am are 2 of the most powerful words in mental programming. When you say I am, because only you can say I am about you. In the whole world, nobody else can use those 2 words with regard to you. And your subconscious recognizes it. When you say I am responsible, I am responsible, you can actually imagine the feeling that would accompany the words. When you say I like myself, you don't say I like myself. You say I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. Imagine when you say I am responsible, you don't say I am responsible. You say I am responsible. I am responsible. In other words, emotionalize it. Wrap it up with emotion. Drive it into the subconscious mind like a detonator, and the effect that it will have on your personality and on your feelings will be tremendous. Now, again, with regard to affirmations, what I use is a series of index cards. And you can put your affirmations, your positive, present tense, personal statements on affirmations, and review those affirmations over and over again. Every time you review them, every time you think about them, every time you repeat them and drive them into the subconscious mind, every time you impress them, you increase the potential for them to be expressed externally. Now, one final thing is when you use affirmations, try to keep your daily words and actions consistent with your affirmations. Try to keep the things that you say when you're walking around and the things that you do consistent with the words that you say to yourself in private. All right, the next thing that we do is what is called verbalization. Verbalization is speaking aloud, speaking your affirmations aloud. Now, there's 2 ways that you can do this. Best to do it in private, but basically you increase the impact of an affirmation by as much as 80% and even more when you say it out loud. If you say to yourself, I like myself, but if you say, I like myself, or I feel terrific, or I feel wonderful, or I am responsible, I earn $50,000 a year. When I first learned about this process, my goal was to earn $50,000 a year, and I realized that the only way I could ever earn $50,000 a year was by repeating this over and over again. And surprisingly enough, when I began doing it, I was not making anywhere near $50,000, and I was very, very skeptical of whether or not it would work. I can only tell you from the bottom of my heart that it does work. So verbalize it. Another thing that you can do is in front of a mirror. If you verbalize in front of a mirror, you have two impacts working simultaneously. You have the impact of what you can see, plus what you are saying, plus if you emotionalize what you are saying, you have three access points to reprogramming the subconscious working simultaneously. So you stand in front of a mirror, you can say, in front of the mirror, you say, I feel terrific, or I look great, or I look great, or you can say, you look great. Because when we talk to ourselves in front of a mirror, now you mustn't do this in a public washroom when there's other people around, because they may think you're a little bit strange, but nonetheless, verbalization is a very important part of driving this message into the subconscious. Remember, the key to this is whatever you can hold in your mind on a continuing basis, you can have. The only question is, can you repeat it long enough and hard enough, often enough, to impress it permanently in the subconscious mind? Once you impress it permanently in the subconscious mind, it takes on a power of its own that will eventually bring it into your reality at exactly the right time and in exactly the right way for you. And this, have you ever had the occasion where you are sitting comfortably, relaxed, and somebody says, come on, let's go and do this, or let's get up and do that, and you say, no, I'm comfortable. Remember, you're into your comfort zone. Comfort is a great killer of human potential. You say, no. They say, oh, come on, just get up and do a little bit. So you get up just a little bit, and you move just a little bit, and as you begin to move, you start to get into the swing of it, and pretty soon you get into it completely, and you totally forget about going back to the couch or the chair that you were in. Well, you can act your way into feeling. You can act your way into feeling almost anything. We call this, if you like, pretending. Pretend that you have the quality already. For instance, if you want to be courageous and unafraid, pretend that you're courageous and unafraid already. If you want to be confident, pretend that you have the confidence. There's an old saying that says, fake it until you make it. Fake it until you make it. Remember we talked about the gentleman who was told that he was the reincarnation of Napoleon? That all he had to do was he had to act like Napoleon and realize that on the court. And you know what will happen is that judges and people observing a person doing this find that you will hit more accurately, you hit with more force, you are better, you are more confident, you're more capable. Golfers. Another example is if you want to be a great golfer, is imagine that you are already a great golfer. If you want to be a great salesperson, imagine that you are already a great salesperson and walk, talk, carry, act as though you had the part already. Dress the part. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, do I look the part of a great golfer? Do I look the part of the executive, the salesman, or the saleswoman, or whatever it happens to be that I would like to be? These four, we call this the VAVA. V-A-V-A. V-A-V-A. Well, actually, I should do it this way. V-A-V-A. These are the keys to rapid personality change. The V is for visualization. Visualize and play the picture of the desired person you would like to be over and over again until it is accepted by the subconscious as a reality. Remember, the subconscious obeys your conscious command. If you command the subconscious, and you command the subconscious by the thoughts you hold in your conscious mind, by the thoughts that you dwell upon, the law of concentration. If you hold that thought in your mind on a continuing basis, eventually it clicks into the subconscious and it takes on a power of its own. The second is to affirm, and affirm over and over again. There are many people who say that they would rather go without breakfast than go without their affirmations each morning. Speak to yourself positively. Use positive self-talk all the time. Remember, you talk to yourself at the rate of almost 1,500 words a minute. Most people talk to themselves in terms of doubt and fear and worry and anxiety. Talk to yourself positively. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Just repeating, I can do it over and over again. Boost your self-confidence and boost your self-esteem. When you have nothing else to do, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Because saying I like myself or I love myself expands your ability and your capacity in every area of your life. Also, verbalize. Speak out loud. Make sure the things that you say out loud are consistent with the person that you want to be and the things that you want to do. Verbalize and say, I like myself. Don't say aloud things that, like, I'm never on time, I can't lose weight, I can't quit smoking, I wish I could, and so on. But always speak in positive terms, remember that you can almost double the force of an affirmation by speaking it aloud. If you speak it really loud, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. If you speak it really loud and really strong, it has double, triple, sometimes several times the impact. And finally, assume the role. Pretend as though you already had the part. Assume the role. Imagine you've been hired to play the role of an extremely successful person in a Broadway play. And in this role, what you are going to do is you're going to walk, talk, and act as though you were the success, as though you were the role model, as though you were the ideal image of the perfect person that you want to become. And if you walk it, talk it, pretend it, visualize it, think it, and affirm it over and over again, that is the person that you become as inevitably as the sun rising in the east